Today I'm going to show you how to teach your dog to come to you when you call them. I have made several videos on this topic before, but I thought it was time to update on some of that information. So first, let's take a quick look at why dogs don't come when we call them.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Dogs don't automatically know what the behavior is. They aren't born knowing the value of it. And if we never teach it to them properly, they will be unreliable with it. I'm going to show you how to teach it so that it maximizes your chances of success. Sometimes people attempt to teach this, and even though they may be doing it correctly, they either don't practice enough or don't do it with the right intensity and distractions. This is a difficult behavior for a dog to generalize, so we have to start small, progress slowly, and use a variety of learning principles. Finally, a dog will not come when called, at least reliably, if they have developed a problematic association. This can happen if you call your dog and then immediately reprimand them or tell them how bad they are for doing something undesirable. It can also happen if you use aversive punishment training techniques that are physically and psychologically intimidating to a dog. These are unhelpful when training a dog, no matter what you're trying to do. To introduce the cue, we need to create a setup where the dog does what we want and gets rewarded for it. Here, I am tossing a treat, and as she returns from getting it, I introduce the cue, "Come here." As this is repeated a few times, the dog starts to associate the action of coming towards us with the cue, "Come here." You want to start this in a distraction-free environment and repeat it a few times. Come here. Come here. Come here. Once the dog starts to get the general idea, it can be a challenging task to start to introduce distractions. Here's a little exercise that will set you off in the right direction. It really helps to prime our dogs to be attentive to us before we even begin to practice this behavior around distractions. Here, I'm allowing her to do what she wants, but I'm prepared to mark and reward the second she checks in with me and makes eye contact. Right there. What you don't see on the screen is that there are a number of dogs and other distractions just to the right off camera. If your dog offers no check-ins, you can either wait longer or move further away from them and practice there. It's critical to set the dog up to be successful here. And you have to be patient. As you can see, as soon as she looks at me, I will mark the behavior with the click and reward her. After this, I let her do whatever she wants, but remain watchful for the next time I get a check-in. I'm also not asking her to pay attention to me in any direct way, but letting her figure it out on her own and simply providing encouragement towards the desirable behavior. Soon enough, the dog will start to offer these check-ins more frequently and with lesser time in between. And this is how you know you're headed in the right direction. The second exercise that will help prepare a dog for successful recalls around distractions is attention building with eye contact. The dog must already know this behavior beforehand. If you'd like to learn how to teach this to your dog, you can see my tutorial on that topic. As you can see, I am cueing her to look at me and then marking and rewarding her for making eye contact when she does. After a few trials, it's a good idea to increase the amount of time that eye contact is sustained before you reward. But it is important to remember to keep these increments as gradual as possible. As you work on this exercise, remember that sometimes your dog's environment is going to be more interesting or more rewarding than whatever you have to offer. Your dog's unresponsiveness to the exercise provides clues about what needs to be adjusted to make this work. And here is an example of just that. As you can see, she's pretty distracted here. There's a lot of distracting activity happening very close to us, and so I'm not able to get the level of focus that I'd like to have. When this happens, we have to evaluate what's happening and what needs to change. It could be that they're not interested in the rewards that we're using, maybe they just need a little bit of a break, or they're not yet skilled enough to be able to drown out the noise. At this point, I decided to move about 10 feet further away from what appears to be captivating her attention at this time and try again. And having done that, you can see the dramatic change in her ability to perform the task at hand. This is just moments later. This tells me that this distance is more appropriate to work at right now, and over time, we can move closer to where we were earlier. This may seem like a big chore to have to do this, but most people are surprised at how much of a difference it makes and how much more reliable our training becomes when we make these types of adjustments. And now we are finally ready to start doing some practice drills. You can already see how much more interested she is in me at this point as opposed to the environment. This is after just minutes of doing the primary exercises. The idea here is to let the dog explore the environment and then call the dog towards you in a very emphasized way. Watch how I use body language to my advantage, and you can't hear it, but I'm also using an exaggerated and inviting tone of voice. I want to point out that while you are training this behavior, be sure to have a long leash attached to your dog at all times for their safety. I'm not using one here because she's already quite comfortable with this, but if I had even the slightest suspicion that she would not respond to my call, I would be using one. After she gets to me, I give her a treat and then use a release word to let her go back to explore freely. A few seconds later, I will call her again and repeat the drill. What we've done here is really set the dog up to be attentive to us by building up to this gradually. If we attempt to do this right away, the distractions can be too overwhelming. Of course, once the dog is reliable with the recall and has had sufficient practice, the initial attention building exercises will not be required. But until then, I would encourage you to try them out. And finally, you can see how speedy the recalls already start to become. And finally, you want to be able to consolidate the recall behavior into your regular routines with play. Here you can see I am practicing some basic obedience using the recall, and the reward is a game of fetch. Once the behavior is consistent with a certain level of distractions, it needs to be used in a fun and engaging way. This way, it goes beyond just simply being about getting the food reward, because that will only take you so far. The dog has to view the activity as engaging. We have to connect with them in a fun way. And fetch as a reward is the perfect way to make that happen for a dog. I highly recommend that if your dog has not yet learned to play fetch, that you start to work on that also. It will help you train your dog to work for rewards other than food. And this is very important for those dogs that are less motivated by food. This cue can save a dog's life, so we need our dogs to come reliably when they're called. For this to happen, the cue for this behavior has to be sacred, and great care needs to be taken with using it. As a general rule, while in training, you never want to call your dog to you if you suspect that they will either not come or will be disappointed by having chosen to follow through with it. On the opposite side of that, you want to make sure that you do use the word every time that you know your dog will come and will find something highly rewarding, such as food or a walk. If you do all of these things together and consistently, over time you will notice that your dog starts to respond to your calls reliably. If you'd like more information or tips on how to teach your dog to do this behavior, you can follow the links in the description box below. This is a critical behavior that every dog needs to know. And Just like anything else that we teach our dogs, the key to doing it right is making sure that the dog sees it as an enjoyable activity and has fun doing it. Hey, no peeking.